Could it be that you're doing too much for the Lord? This is Matthew 17. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter and the two brothers, James and John, and led them up a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Jesus' appearance was transformed so that his face shone like the sun and his clothes became as white as light. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Jesus. Peter exclaimed, "Lord, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I'll make these 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But even as he spoke, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved son, who brings me joy. Listen to him." The disciples were terrified and fell face down on the ground. I love that we get this raw reaction of Peter doing too much. What I mean by that is Jesus never asked Peter to make memorials for him or Moses or Elijah. And I think it was in Peter's good intentions to do something for the Lord that he wanted to do. He saw that this was a serious moment. Jesus is transfigured into this beaming light, and we see Elijah and Moses, and he wants to do something, so he wants to make memorials. And that was a common thing, to make memorials in the place where God's presence was, where you experienced the Lord. So it wasn't an uncommon thing, but Jesus never asked him to do that. This was a response of Peter. And the Bible says, even as he was saying these things, the Father's voice spoke and drew attention right back to the source. He said, "This is my son in whom I get great joy. Listen to him." Then their reaction to his voice is that they were terrified and they fell face down on the ground. So this just got me thinking, like, is it possible there are things we are doing in response to the Lord that Jesus never asked us to do? I think it's funny that Jesus doesn't even really pay attention to Peter and his reaction. He doesn't say like, "Oh no, Peter, it's okay. You don't need the memorials." But the Father spoke and directed the authority back to Jesus and said, "This is my son. Listen to him." So I love that we're out here hustling for Jesus. I love that we are so devoted and that we want to do all these amazing works for the kingdom. And we will, and we are, and we should. But is it what Jesus asked you to do? Because I think sometimes these things that we want to do for the Lord are actually distractions from the main thing, the main source, which is him and what he's saying. And I think it's good for us to know that even someone like Peter, who was in the very place where Jesus was being transfigured, could have a response that wasn't necessarily bad intended, but it just wasn't what Jesus asked him to do. I think it's interesting after that in verse 7 it says, "Then Jesus came over and touched them. 'Get up,' he said, 'don't be afraid.' And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus." So I think in the midst of our ministry and our good works and our doings, we need to make sure that we only see Jesus, that we are so fixated and focused, and simply do what he says. No more, no less. Love you guys, and stay tethered to Jesus.